I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Another vote and another rejection of same-sex marriage. Plus, the new Evangelization, thoughts from a high-ranking Cardinal.
It's not enough to be a satisfied Christian. You have to go out and discuss.
And aiming for a new understanding between Christianity and Judaism.
Judaism is an absolute source for Christian self-understanding because Christianity begins as one Jewish group among many at the end of the Second Temple period.
Amendment 1 passed muster with an overwhelming majority of North Carolina voters. North Carolina became the 31st state to define marriage as between one man and one woman, declaring this as the only domestic legal union that will be valid or recognized in the state. This definition of traditional marriage is now ingrained in the state constitution, elevating it from what has been state law since 1996. Now, this just one day before President Barack Obama said he believes same-sex couples should be allowed to marry. Opponents of the Defense of Marriage Amendment maintain it promotes outright discrimination and warned it could result in a host of problems for unmarried couples, including erosion of their health benefits and those of their children. The CharlotteObserver.com reporting that thousands of people have signed a petition launched on change.org demanding that the Democratic National Convention be yanked out of Charlotte. Proponents, of course, see it quite differently. Earlier today, I spoke to David Haynes. He's Director of Communications for the Diocese of Charlotte, about how the decision impacts the church and the push for gay marriage. David, Amendment 1, 61% for, 39% against. Now, I'm hesitant to say congratulations or call this a victory simply because, as evangelist Billy Graham put it, who would have thought we'd see a day where we would have to debate the definition of marriage? Do you agree?
I do, and also I agree with you about being hesitant to call it a victory. I mean, certainly a 61% for traditional marriage is a huge victory. But, you know, churches, the Diocese of Charlotte is the church in the western part of North Carolina. We're not usually engaged in confrontational type of things like this amendment battle has been over the last 6 to 8 months. So I'll be glad to get back to the real world, the real pastoral work of what I do in the diocese here as the Director of Communications.
And David, how did you go about preparing the diocese for the pending vote? Give us a sense of what went on behind the scenes when you learned that this bill was up for a vote. I know your bishops tried to rally the parishioners and the voters to really get out there and make a difference.
Oh, they did very much so. Both Bishop Peter Jukas, who's the Bishop of Charlotte, and Bishop Michael Burbidge, who's the Bishop of Raleigh, were very closely working together and quite hard on getting this amendment passed. But our process from the beginning was to work through our Catholic churches to basically get the message of church teaching to the people in the pews and then to encourage them to vote. We had bulletin announcements and bulletin inserts. A letter was read at all masses throughout the diocese, actually throughout both dioceses, last weekend. And we also sent out about 130,000 postcards asking people to vote for this issue and reminding them to get to the polls on May the 8th. And it all seemed to work very well. We knew we were in a good position in North Carolina from the start, but we actually, the end vote actually exceeded our expectations a little bit, and a 61% is a whoppingly large vote of confidence for traditional marriage.
That is an extremely wide margin. But David, I want to ask you, North Carolina law already banned gay marriage, so why was it so important to take it this one step further?
We wanted to put the definition of traditional marriage into the state constitution because the only people who can change the state constitution are all of the people. A vote similar to what we had yesterday. If it was just a regular old state law, it could be changed by the legislature or it could be changed by an activist judge. And that's actually happened in several states around the country where judges have looked at a state law and said, no, I think I'm gonna toss aside 100,000 years of human history and 2,000 years of Christianity, and I'm just going to say we can have same-sex marriage in this state. We wanted to prevent that from happening in North Carolina. So now the only way our amendment can be changed would be another amendment vote by the people. And given that we have a 61% majority right now, I don't see that happening anytime in the near future.
When President Obama and former President Bill Clinton and other prominent leaders vehemently opposed this bill, saying it would single out and discriminate against committed gay and lesbian couples, how do you respond to people that say this is a form of discrimination now ingrained in your state constitution?
Well, the opponents, first of all, they did have Bill Clinton, but the supporters of the amendment had Billy Graham, who is a Charlotte, North Carolina native and is much loved in this state. He endorsed the amendment over the weekend, and I think that there was a huge positive impact from that. But on the question, your question about discrimination, we as Catholics believe that God made men and women differently, and that men and women together create new life. And marriage has to be about the love of two adults and the openness to having children. And same-sex unions simply are not open to the possibility of creating new life, and therefore they don't fit the definition of being married. And if they don't fit the definition, then it really isn't discrimination to say that people who are in a same-sex relationship, and you know, those people, they are made in the image and likeness of God just like everyone else. They are deserving lives of peace and dignity, but their same-sex union cannot create life. It isn't marriage and shouldn't be allowed to be called marriage.
David, the main argument for Amendment 1 from legislators and religious leaders alike was that the issue is too important for the legislature or the courts to decide alone, and that a vote on the matter is the fairest and most democratic solution. What does this say now about the influence of the church on public policy?
Well, you know, it's the church. First of all, everybody who goes to the Catholic Church is a taxpayer, and they take every taxpayer should take some knowledge and life experience into the voting booth with them, and some of the life experience would include what they learned in church, and our bishops were teaching on Catholic teaching with regard to marriage. Marriage isn't just a religious institution, and it isn't just a civil institution. They're both intertwined. And that's why the church can and should have a voice in the public square when it comes to the discussion of something like a marriage as it is defined in the state of North Carolina.
All right, David, thank you so much. As you say, 61-39, you can't argue with that. So some congratulations are certainly in order, and we do extend that to you as well. But I know there's a lot more work ahead.
There is. Unfortunately, this thing could probably come back several years down the line. We need to do a better job of catechizing all of our adults about the importance of marriage in a stable society. All
right, David, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate it. And North Carolina is the last among the southern states to pass the controversial amendment. Coming up, more on President Obama's support of same-sex marriage. That and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. Breaking news today. President Obama has announced that he supports same-sex marriage. In an interview set to air on ABC's Good Morning America, Obama says he has spoken with many people about the issue, including family, friends, and staff members. The president says it is important for him to affirm that he thinks a same-sex marriage should be legal. According to ABC, Obama stressed that this is his personal opinion, and he still supports states deciding the issue for themselves. The president raised the ire of U.S. bishops and conservatives when he announced last year that he would no longer have the Justice Department defend the Defense of Marriage Act in court. The measure defines marriage on the federal level as between a man and a woman. And you can add another Catholic organization to the list of groups filing suit over a controversial federal mandate. EWTN and Catholic News Agency report that Legatus, a national organization of Catholic CEOs and business leaders, has filed a lawsuit over the Health and Human Services contraception mandate. The company argues that the case is one of religious freedom. The mandate would force most religious organizations to violate their beliefs by offering contraception and sterilization in their employee health plans. Legatus wants the mandate permanently blocked, arguing it is a violation of the rights of free speech and free exercise of religion. The organization was founded in 1987 by Thomas Monahan, the then owner of Domino's Pizza. A Catholic watchdog group has collected more than 16,000 signatures opposing Georgetown University's hosting of the Health and Human Services Secretary at a graduation ceremony. The Cardinal Newman Society is urging Georgetown to rescind an invitation to HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, seen here. She is viewed as one of the driving forces behind the contraception mandate. Sebelius is scheduled to give an address at Georgetown's Public Policy Institute Awards ceremony, just one of the events taking place during the school's commencement weekend. In an online petition, Cardinal Newman Society President Patrick Riley says the invitation is especially insulting to faithful Catholics and their bishops. Riley talked more about this yesterday during an interview with Currents.
They're honoring someone who has been steadfastly opposed to the Church's religious freedom rights under the First Amendment, and also is a Catholic who holds a very strong pro-abortion position. So this is obviously someone who should not be honored by a Catholic university. It's not a surprise, and yet it's shocking at the same time. It's shocking just in how blatant it is, especially this year, to be honoring Kathleen Sebelius. It's just a rather in-your-face type of action by Georgetown.
And you can listen to the full interview on our website, currentsny.net. And the ongoing saga over a commencement address at another Catholic college. Last month, Anna Maria College in Massachusetts rescinded its invitation to have Ted Kennedy's widow speak at its commencement. The school made that decision after Worcester Bishop Robert McManus raised concerns about Victoria Reggie Kennedy's public support of abortion rights and same-sex marriage. Now McManus himself has been asked not to attend the ceremony. The school feels his presence would be a distraction to the event. A spokesman for the Worcester Diocese tells a local newspaper that Anna Maria officials met with Bishop McManus last week and he agreed to the school's request. U.S. bishops are repeating their call that Congress put a circle of protection around programs that help the country's most vulnerable people. In a letter to House members, the bishops say every budget decision should be evaluated to determine whether it helps or threatens human life and dignity. The bishops oppose the budget proposal by Congressman Paul Ryan, which would alter the child tax credit and make cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. This week, the House Budget Committee voted to approve Ryan's plan. Parents, family members, elected officials, and organizations held an emergency town hall meeting today in Brooklyn. The aim, to save after-school programs in the city, including two run by Catholic charities of Brooklyn and Queens. The meeting was part of a citywide campaign taking place today. Cuts to the city budget will result in the closure of 153 after-school programs in Brooklyn alone. Catholic charities of Brooklyn and Queens say the cuts will affect more than 47,000 children across the city. A campaign by a Catholic civil rights group against The Daily Show appears to be working. Delta Airlines has announced it will no longer advertise with the Comedy Central program. That decision came after the Catholic League pressured Delta and other sponsors to pull their ads unless Daily Show host Jon Stewart issues an apology. The League objected to a story on the program in which a manger scene was shown in front of the vagina of a naked woman. The Catholic League is targeting other sponsors and says its campaign will continue until Stewart issues an apology. A historic California church was vandalized over the weekend. Police say one or more people caused widespread damage at Holy Cross Church in Santa Cruz. Among the items hit, a baptismal font brought to the Santa Cruz mission by Junipero Serra in the late 1700s. The vandals also shattered windows, sprayed and poured paint throughout the church. Bishops in the Philippines are among those demanding justice after an anchor who worked at church-run radio station there was gunned down. The incident happened Tuesday on a highway in the city of Mati. According to a colleague, the victim was not a hard-hitting commentator, unlike other journalists who have exposed corruption and drug trading. Police say they are investigating that incident. Well, in his weekly general audience on Wednesday, Pope Benedict talked about how prayer has worked in his own life and that of the first pope. Rome Reports has more on that.
With roughly 10,000 people gathered in St. Peter's Square, the Pope spoke about how, through the power of prayer, early Christians helped St. Peter in his release from prison.
Peter was sleeping, a sign of his surrender to the Lord and his trust in the prayers of the Christian community. The fulfillment of this prayer is accompanied by immense joy as Peter rejoins the community and bears witness to the risen Lord's saving power.
Benedict XVI went on to explain that just as the power of prayer was critical for St. Peter's release, thousands of years later, he too, as the successor of Peter, thanks everyone for their prayers.
Peter's liberation reminds us that especially in moments of trial, our perseverance in prayer and the prayerful solidarity of all our brothers and sisters in Christ sustains us in faith. As Peter's successor, I thank all of you for the support of your prayers.
A choir from the country of Portugal gave a little color to Wednesday's general audience. Then the Pope thanked the Italian Civil Protection Department and its 250 volunteers for helping out in events held at the Vatican and in Rome.
And finally, Portugal is cutting 4 holidays in an effort to boost its economy. The country announced it will no longer give workers off on the feast of Corpus Christi and All Saints' Day. The decision was made after consulting with the Vatican. 2 civil holidays were also dropped. Portugal and the Vatican say they will reevaluate the decision after 5 years. Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, from the Vatican to the Diocese of Brooklyn, a top cardinal talks new evangelization.
What can we do to help Christians to leave the consumer mentality behind?
Welcome back. We need a new evangelization. That's the sentiment of Pope John Paul II. It's something that is close to Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarcio's heart and inspires our work here at NET. And earlier this week, we had a chance to hear more about the new evangelization from the top as a Vatican cardinal spoke on that at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston, Queens.
Whom shall I send? The roots of the new evangelization.
We've come tonight to listen to Cardinal Cordes, who is from the Holy See. He's retired. He's come to us tonight to speak about the new evangelization, which is really a timely topic because in the year of faith, we've been called to look at the new evangelization again, and he's going to speak to us from the perspectives of the new ecclesial movements and communities, which he knows very well, how we should undertake the new evangelization here in our own country.
It's not enough to be a satisfied Christian. You have to go out and discuss. This is risky. New evangelization is a means to discover the beauty of the faith. It was a push of the Pope to make people active on the basis of their baptism, to go forward, to reach the people. It has become evident that this new impulse to the mission of the Church is for all members of the people of God. What can we do to help Christians to leave the consumer mentality behind? The attempt to give only to the clergy the responsibility to continue the saving word of Christ, moreover, stands in a plain contrast with the theology of Vatican II. Even priests and bishops can have a consumer mentality. And because society today is offering everything to you, it's a little bit the attitude of everybody.
We're not here to obligate anyone. The key point of it is to do an awakening to those outside of the church.
The new evangelization first has to hit me. And unless I'm moved, no one else will be moved through me.
I've never really experienced the old evangelization. All of us here in the seminary, we grew up with Pope John Paul II. It was always the new evangelization. I guess for us it's just evangelization. It's being out there, being real with people, and introducing them to Jesus. We don't get a visitor like this very often, so it was just a great chance to get his perspective.
There is still a climate of religion in the States, and I am a little bit jealous if I compare the States with Europe, especially with Germany or France, Scandinavia. The influence of American culture is so strong. If you do important work for new evangelization here, then it will come to Europe too. And so your example is very, very, very important.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, remembering past atrocities and moving forward.
Ancient animosities can be healed that long-standing conflicts really can have productive and peaceful solutions that endure over time.
Finally tonight, if you ask Catholics around Brooklyn and Queens where their roots lie, you're likely to get many different answers. That's because the boroughs are home to people that come from at least 167 different countries. But how many Catholics know the roots of their faith? That was just one aspect of a talk this past weekend at Immaculate Conception Church in Astoria, examining Christian anti-Judaism.
And so tonight is about remembering what we call the shadow on the cross. That piece of Christian history that's dark, that people don't want to look at, that we've been so successful at in the past 50 years, changing.
Well, this is part of our series on different religions and our way of understanding our own religion through the prism of those religions. This year we're doing Christianity and Judaism, which is a very interesting one because our faiths are so intertwined historically and theologically and spiritually. So it gives people an understanding, deepened understanding of our own Christian faith through the prism of contemporary Judaism.
It's so important that both groups understand that they are connected because Judaism is an absolute source for Christian self-understanding because Christianity begins as one Jewish group among many at the end of the Second Temple period. Unlike any two other religions, we share 39 books together. Christians call that the Old Testament, and Jews call it the Tanakh, or sometimes Torah, to refer to the whole set. Jews and Christians, as Pope John Paul said, are intrinsically linked. Pope John Paul said Jews are our elder brothers, and I add sisters in Christ. So it's a relationship between two religions like none other. I think what happened and what damaged the relationship early on was a quick forgetting of Jewish roots, that Christians forgot their Jewish roots. The classic charge is called deicide, that the Jews killed God, or the Christ killer charge. It's the same thing.
And they forgot that Jesus was Jewish, and Mary was Jewish, and the apostles were Jewish, and all these, pillars of the church were all Jewish. You can't take away the Jewishness of our faith. It's part of it.
Now in America, Jews and Christians get along rather well. One has to know the history, and the history is something rather bloody.
There was a lot of damage done, but I think and I hope that we can repair it.
There's hope for progress, but since the ongoing things in history between all kinds of groups always have difficulty, it's hard to tell when.
But I hope people take from this series of Christianity and Judaism is a renewed love and respect for Judaism as a faith distinct from Christianity, but also to rediscover within Christianity our deep Jewish roots.
Ancient animosities can be healed. That long-standing conflicts really can have productive and peaceful solutions that endure over time. We're still young in the process, 50 years versus 2,000, but we're getting there. We've seen problems crop up, and we've been able to solve them because of the past 50 years of hard work.
And that is all for this evening. Coming up on Thursday night, Brooklyn's Catholic newspaper honors some up-and-coming journalists. Until then, be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. You can also follow us on Twitter and connect with us on Facebook. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.